365 days. That's how long I stayed silent while my husband's family treated our marriage like it was written in pencil, ready to be erased at their convenience. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But when they made me sleep in their garage during their anniversary celebration, that's when I finally showed them who really owned their precious family home. My name is Emma Davis. I'm 32 years old, and until last year I spent most of my adult life trying to earn my place at the Wilson family table. If you've ever felt like an outsider looking in at your own life, pull up a chair. This story is for you. When I first met Jason, I fell for his easy smile and the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. We dated for 2 years before he proposed, on a chilly October evening with fairy lights strung across his apartment balcony. I said yes before he even finished asking. That night, wrapped in his arms, I thought I had found my forever family. The Wilsons, however, had other plans. Patricia Wilson, Jason's mother, greeted our engagement news with a thin smile that never reached her eyes. "Well, this is certainly unexpected," she said, champagne glass clutched too tightly between manicured fingers. Robert, Jason's father, simply nodded and turned the conversation to their country club membership. Meanwhile, Jason's siblings, Megan and Tyler, exchanged glances I pretended not to see. I told myself it was just surprise, that they'd warm up to me, that I just needed to try harder. That optimism lasted 5 years. 5 years of showing up early to help prepare holiday meals, only to be told I was in the way. 5 years of thoughtful birthday gifts that were set aside with barely a glance. 5 years of being seated at the far end of the table during family gatherings, while Jason was pulled to sit next to his mother. 5 years of watching Jason morph back into their compliant son whenever we crossed the threshold of that imposing, colonial house. Still, I persisted. I brought homemade desserts to every dinner. I remembered their birthdays when Jason forgot. I listened to Patricia's lengthy stories about her garden club rivals without interrupting. I endured Robert's political rants that directly opposed my own beliefs. I smiled through Megan's not-so-subtle comments about my modest career in marketing. I laughed at Tyler's jokes at my expense. I kept showing up, with hope as fragile as glass and twice as transparent. Then came their 40th wedding anniversary. The invitation arrived in heavy cream cardstock with gold embossing. "The honor of your presence is requested," it began, as if my presence had ever been truly wanted. Jason was excited, a full weekend celebration at their home after an elegant dinner at the River Oaks Country Club. Everyone would stay over both Friday and Saturday nights. "It'll be fun," he promised, squeezing my hand. "Mom's going all out." I spent weeks finding the perfect gift, a custom illustration of their first home together, commissioned from an artist I could barely afford. I had it professionally framed, wrapped it in silver paper with a hand-calligraphed card. I even bought a new dress, navy blue with delicate beading, modest enough for Patricia's approval, but still making me feel beautiful. The country club dinner on Friday went exactly as expected. I was seated between Jason's ancient uncle and a family friend I'd never met, while Jason sat at the main table with his parents and siblings. I picked at my salmon while making pleasant conversation, watching Jason laugh at inside jokes I wasn't privy to. The illustrator had charged me extra for rush delivery, but the framed artwork sat perfectly wrapped in the trunk of our car. When we arrived back at the Wilson house, a sprawling 2-story colonial with perfect landscaping, Patricia was directing everyone to their rooms for the weekend. "Megan and Brad, you'll be in the blue guest room," she said, checking her list. "Tyler and Sophia, the garden room. Jason, you'll be in your old bedroom, of course." I waited for my name, standing in the grand foyer with our overnight bag at my feet. Patricia looked right through me, continuing to assign rooms to cousins and family friends. Jason shifted uncomfortably beside me but said nothing. Finally, when everyone else had been accommodated, I cleared my throat. "Patricia, where should Jason and I stay?" I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. She blinked, as if just noticing me for the first time. "Oh, Emma. Well, we're quite full with family, as you can see." She gestured vaguely around the 15-bedroom house. "Jason's room is rather small for two, and he'll want to catch up with his cousins. I've made up the daybed in the garage apartment for you. It's actually quite cozy." The room went quiet. I felt heat creep up my neck as 30 pairs of eyes turned in my direction. The garage apartment, a glorified storage room above there. 3-car garage, used for gardening supplies and Christmas decorations. It wasn't even properly heated. I looked at Jason, waiting for him to speak up. His face flushed red, but he just rubbed the back of his neck. "Mom, maybe Emma and I could," he started. "Nonsense," Patricia cut him off. "You haven't seen your cousins in months. Besides, Emma won't mind. She's always so accommodating." The way she said accommodating, like it was a disease, something pitiable, made my stomach clench. Still, I nodded, picked up my bag, and walked out the front door toward the garage, alone. Behind me, I heard conversation resume, as if nothing unusual had happened. The garage apartment was freezing. The daybed sagged in the middle and was covered with a musty quilt that smelled faintly of mothballs. A bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows across boxes labeled Xmas and Spring Decor. There was no bathroom. I'd have to trek across the yard to the main house if I needed one during the night. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my beaded dress, and stared at the wall. In that moment, something inside me quietly, finally broke. It wasn't the cold room or the sagging bed. It wasn't even being separated from Jason. It was the realization that after 5 years, this was still my place in their world. Outside, separate, tolerated, never welcomed. I thought about the perfectly wrapped gift in our car, the hours I'd spent choosing the frame, the money I'd spent, money from my promotion bonus that I'd been saving for our own home someday, money that could have gone toward the down payment. Fund that Jason and I had been building so painfully slowly because the Columbus housing market was brutal for young couples. That thought stopped me cold. Our down payment fund. The money we'd been saving for 3 years. The money that always seemed to drain away whenever Jason's family needed something. Megan's destination wedding gift. Tyler's startup investment. The group gift for this very anniversary celebration. I opened my phone and checked our joint savings account. The balance was lower than it should have been. Again. I scrolled through the transactions and found a $1,200 withdrawal from 2 weeks ago. Jason hadn't mentioned it. Another anniversary gift contribution, most likely. Something I hadn't been consulted on. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I changed into my pajamas, teeth chattering in the cold room. I waited for Jason to come check on me, to bring an extra blanket, to apologize, to stand up for me, for us. He never came. Morning arrived with frost on the single window of the garage apartment. I had slept fitfully, waking every hour to pull the thin quilt tighter around me. My phone showed no texts from Jason asking if I was okay. I dressed quietly, putting on the outfit I'd packed for Saturday's brunch, a cardigan and slacks that now seemed ridiculous in their optimism. As I made my way across the dewy lawn toward the main house, I saw lights already on in the kitchen. Patricia would be preparing her famous brunch spread, no doubt. I paused at the back door, hand on the knob, and made a decision. I would not go inside. I would not smile and pretend this was okay. I would not pass Patricia the syrup and ask for her blueberry pancake recipe again. I would not. Instead, I walked back to my car, started the engine, and drove away. The gift remained in the trunk, unwrapped. I drove to the one place I knew would be empty on a Saturday morning, my office. The marketing agency where I'd worked for 7 years, steadily climbing from junior copywriter to creative director. The place where my ideas were heard, where my presence mattered. I sat at my desk in the silent building and opened my laptop. Then I did something I'd never done before. I started researching the Wilson family finances. It wasn't difficult. Robert had mentioned their mortgage refinancing struggles at a dinner months ago, complaining about interest rates and how the bank was robbing them blind. Their address was easy to find in public records. The county property appraiser's website gave me the rest. Their mortgage had been sold twice in recent years, now held by Midwest Financial Partners. I made a phone call to a college friend who worked in real estate investing, then another to my financial advisor. By noon, I had a plan. By Monday, I had set it in motion. By the end of the month, I owned the Wilson family mortgage. Not directly, of course. Through a holding company my real estate friend helped me establish. I took every penny from my personal savings, money I'd earned through late nights and weekend work, money separate from the joint account Jason had been draining. I supplemented it with a loan against my 401k. It was risky, financially reckless, even. But when the paperwork came through, confirming that Riverside Holdings LLC now held the mortgage on 487 Oakwood Lane, something settled in my chest. A calm I hadn't felt in years. I didn't tell Jason. Not yet. When I returned to our apartment, Saturday evening, he was waiting, pacing, phone in hand. "Where have you been?" he demanded. "I've been calling for hours. Mom said you just disappeared." I set my purse down carefully. "Did you check on me last night, Jason? Did you come to see if I was okay sleeping alone in a freezing garage?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "I fell asleep talking to my cousins. I was going to check on you this morning, but you were already gone." "I slept in a storage room," I said quietly, "while you slept in your childhood bed. Your mother put me in a garage while your entire family watched and said nothing. Neither did you. Emma, you know how Mom gets about these family events. She just wanted—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "Just stop. I don't want to hear another excuse about how your mother gets or what your mother wants. What about what I need? What about what we need as a couple?" Jason ran his hands through his hair. "You're overreacting. It was just one night. It's been 5 years, Jason. 5 years of me bending until I'm about to break. 5 years of your family treating me like an inconvenience. 5 years of you choosing them over us, every single time." "That's not fair," he protested. "You know I love you." "Do I?" I asked. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you love the idea of me, a wife who fits into your life without disturbing anything, who accepts being an afterthought to your family, who sleeps in a garage without complaint." We talked, really talked, for the first time in years. It went late into the night, with tears and accusations and finally, painfully, honesty. Jason admitted he'd been conflict avoidant with his family his entire life. I confessed how hollow their rejection had made me feel. We agreed to couples counseling. He promised to establish better boundaries with his family. I didn't tell him about the mortgage, not yet. That card I held close. For 3 months, we worked on our marriage. Jason started standing up to his parents in small ways. I started being honest about my feelings instead of swallowing them. We saw our therapist weekly. Things were slowly improving. Then came Thanksgiving. Another Wilson family tradition. Jason insisted we attend, promising he wouldn't let his mother separate us this time. I agreed, but with a condition. We would bring the anniversary gift I'd never given them, the one that had sat in our spare room closet since that cold April night. When we arrived at the Wilson home, Patricia greeted Jason with the usual enthusiasm and me with the usual cool assessment. Robert shook hands firmly with his son and nodded vaguely in my direction. Megan and Tyler were already inside with their spouses, who cast sympathetic glances my way. The massive dining table was set with Patricia's best china, name cards at each place. Jason and I were seated separately again, despite his promise. When he saw this, he actually spoke up. "Mom, Emma and I will sit together," he said, moving the place cards. Patricia's smile tightened. "But I've already arranged everyone for the best conversation flow." "Then you'll need to rearrange," Jason said firmly. "My wife sits with me." A small victory, but I felt a flush of pride watching him stand his ground. Throughout dinner, Jason kept his hand on mine, a united front against the subtle barbs and exclusionary inside jokes. After the pumpkin pie was served, Jason nodded at me. I retrieved the anniversary gift from our car and brought it to the table. "Mom, Dad," Jason said, "Emma and I wanted to give you your anniversary gift. It's a bit late, but still heartfelt." Patricia looked surprised. "Oh, you didn't need to bring anything. Your contribution to the country club dinner was quite sufficient." I froze. "What contribution?" Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. "The check Jason sent. For the anniversary dinner and weekend. Quite generous." I looked at Jason, who couldn't meet my eyes. The $200 withdrawal. Mystery solved. Still, I pushed the wrapped frame across the table. "This is from both of us. I hope you like it." Patricia unwrapped it with deliberate slowness, her expression already prepared for disappointment. When she saw the illustration of their first home, a modest ranch-style house they'd lived in before Robert's promotion had moved them to their current neighborhood, her practiced smile faltered. "It's your first house," I explained. "The artist worked from old photos Jason provided." Robert leaned forward, genuinely interested for once. "Well, would you look at that? It's 217 Maple Street, exactly as it was. Look at the oak tree we planted, Patricia. It's even got the red door." Patricia's mouth tightened. "How nostalgic. Though I can't imagine why anyone would want a reminder of when we had so little." The table went quiet. I felt Jason tense, beside me. "That house," I said calmly, "is where you started your family, where you brought Jason home from the hospital, where you became who you are today. Some might see value in remembering that." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "Some might prefer to focus on our achievements since then, instead of dwelling in the past." "Like this house?" I asked, gesturing around the formal dining room, the one with a garage apartment suitable for family members you'd rather not. "Acknowledge Emma," Jason warned quietly. But I was done being quiet. 5 years of silence had built up, and now the dam was breaking. "I've tried so hard to be part of this family," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I've shown up for every event, remembered every birthday, swallowed every insult disguised as a joke. And still, you put me in a garage rather than let me sleep under the same roof as your precious son." Patricia's face flushed red. "How dare you create a scene at our family dinner? This is exactly why—" "Why what?" I challenged. "Why I don't belong. Why I'll never be good enough." "Please, finish that thought, Patricia." Robert stood abruptly. "That's enough. This is our home, and you will respect—" "Actually," I interrupted, "we should discuss this home." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder I'd brought for this very moment. "I've been meaning to talk to you about your mortgage." The room went completely still. Jason looked at me in confusion. "What about our mortgage?" Robert asked, his authoritative tone faltering. I slid the folder across the table. "It was recently acquired by Riverside Holdings, LLC. As the new lien holder, we wanted to introduce ourselves." Patricia's hand flew to her pearl necklace. "What nonsense is this?" "Check the documents," I said calmly. "Everything's in order. I purchased your mortgage last month." Robert opened the folder with shaking hands, his face paling as he scanned the legal paperwork. "That's not possible," he whispered. "It's entirely possible," I replied, "and completely legal. You've been making payments to my company for weeks now." Jason stared at me in shock. "Emma, what did you do?" I turned to face him. "What you wouldn't do." I stood up for myself. The room erupted. Patricia was practically hyperventilating. Robert was frantically flipping through the documents. Megan and Tyler were pelting Jason with questions he couldn't answer. Their spouses were studying their plates intently, avoiding eye contact with everyone. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "I have no intention of changing your payment terms or causing you any hardship. Unlike some people, I understand the importance of family. I just wanted you to know that the person you deemed unworthy to sleep in your house now actually owns a significant portion of it." "This is outrageous," Patricia sputtered. "Jason, control your wife." At that, Jason finally found his voice. "No one controls Emma, Mom. That's something I love about her, even when it terrifies me. And right now, I'm thinking she's made her point." He stood beside me, taking my hand. "We're leaving now. Happy Thanksgiving." We walked out together, leaving stunned silence behind us. In the car, Jason turned to me, his expression a mix of awe and uncertainty. "I can't believe you did that," he said. "I can't believe I waited so long," I replied. That night marked the beginning of something new for us. Not perfect, not immediately healed, but honest. The road since then hasn't been straight or easy. Jason still struggles with setting boundaries. I still struggle with trusting that I'm truly valued. But I no longer shrink myself to fit into spaces where I'm not wanted. I no longer wait for approval that will never come. Last month, we bought our own home, a modest 3-bedroom in a neighborhood we love. I sold my interest in the Wilson mortgage to my real estate investor friend, using the proceeds for our down payment. Poetic justice, I thought. We haven't been back to the Wilson house since that Thanksgiving. Jason sees his parents occasionally for coffee in neutral locations. Sometimes I join him, sometimes I don't. Patricia is civil now, if not warm. Robert actually makes eye contact, small steps. Last week, a package arrived at our new home. Inside was the framed illustration of the Wilsons' first house, with a note in Robert's handwriting. "Some things are worth remembering. Thank you." I hung it in our guest room, not in a garage, but in a space warmed by sunlight. A reminder that sometimes standing your ground means finding new ground altogether. So if you're watching this and feeling like an outsider in your own life, remember? You don't have to sleep in anyone's garage. You don't have to accept scraps of affection. You don't have to disappear to keep the peace. Sometimes the family you fight hardest to be part of isn't the family you need. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for them is to stop trying to fit where you were never meant to. And sometimes, just sometimes, you discover that you've had the power all along. I didn't sleep that night after we left the Wilson house. Jason and I drove home in silence, the weight of what I'd done settling between us like an uninvited guest. Back in our apartment, he paced the living room while I sat curled in the armchair, watching him process. "You bought their mortgage," he kept saying, like repeating it might make it make sense. "You actually bought my parents' mortgage." "I did," I replied simply. There was no point denying it now. "With what money?" His voice wasn't accusatory, just confused. "We've been saving for our own place for years. We barely have enough for a down payment." I took a deep breath. This was the conversation I'd been avoiding, not just about the mortgage, but about everything. "I used my personal savings," I said. "The account you don't know about." Jason stopped pacing. "You have a separate account?" I nodded. "I opened it 3 years ago, after you withdrew $3,000 for Megan's destination wedding gift without discussing it with me. I've been putting aside 20% of each paycheck since then." His face fell as understanding dawned. You've been hiding money from me. I've been protecting myself, I corrected gently. Every time we got close to our down payment goal, something came up with your family. Another emergency, another celebration, another expectation. And you never said no. He sank onto the couch across from me, his shoulders slumped. I didn't realize. I thought we were making those decisions together. We weren't, I said. You were making them, and I was going along to keep the peace, just like I've been doing with your family since the day we met. The truth hung between us, uncomfortable but necessary. Jason ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit I'd always found endearing. Now it just made him look lost. What happens now? He asked. With my parents' house? Nothing changes for them, I explained. They keep making their regular payments. The only difference is where those payments go. And where exactly do they go? To Riverside Holdings LLC, the company I established with help from my college friend Mark. He's in real estate investment, specializes in mortgage acquisition. Jason looked at me with new eyes, as if seeing a stranger. This was calculated. You planned this. Yes, I admitted. After they put me in the garage, I realized something had to change. Either our relationship with your family or my relationship with myself. So you went nuclear, he said, a hint of accusation creeping into his voice. I leaned forward. No, Jason. Nuclear would have been foreclosing on their home when they inevitably missed a payment. Nuclear would have been telling everyone in their social circle that the perfect Wilsons are leveraged to the hilt. Nuclear would have been serving them papers on their actual anniversary. I paused, letting that sink in. What I did was create consequences. For the first time in 5 years. Dawn was breaking by the time we finished talking. Jason moved between anger, hurt, and reluctant admiration. I remained steady, explaining my perspective without apology. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity after years of subtle erosion. I need some time to process this, he finally said, exhaustion lining his face. Take all the time you need, I replied. I've had months to think it through. He slept on the couch that night and the next. On the third day, he packed a duffel bag. I'm going to stay with Mike for a few days, he said, naming his college roommate who lived across town. I need space to figure out where we go from here. I nodded, swallowing the fear that rose in my throat. This was the risk I'd calculated. That standing up for myself might mean losing him. As the door closed behind him, I wondered if the price of my self-respect would be my marriage. The apartment felt cavernous without Jason. I moved through, the rooms like a ghost, my footsteps echoing off walls suddenly too bare, too white. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office, taking on projects no one else wanted. My colleagues noticed. Everything okay, Emma? Rachel, my closest work friend, asked over lunch in the break room. You've been here until 9 every night this week? I picked at my salad. Jason and I are taking some space. Rachel's eyebrows shot up. She'd been at our wedding, had seen us grow from nervous newlyweds to what she called relationship goals. Want to talk about it? She offered. So I told her. About the years of subtle exclusion from the Wilsons, about the garage, about the mortgage. With each detail, Rachel's eyes widened. Holy shit, Emma, she breathed when I finished. You're either the bravest person I know or the craziest. I managed a small smile. Probably a bit of both. Have you heard from him? She asked. Just texts. Basic stuff. He's okay. He's thinking he needs more time. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Standing up to in-laws is hard enough. Standing up to your husband about his family, that takes guts. Her words stayed with me that evening as I returned to an empty apartment. I'd spent years accommodating, compromising, shaping myself to fit into spaces that were never designed for me. Now I'd stepped fully into my power, and the silence around me was the sound of that choice. A week passed, then another. Jason's texts remained infrequent and impersonal. I began to accept that my marriage might be the collateral damage of my awakening. I started looking at studio apartments, calculating what I could afford alone. I drafted emails to divorce lawyers, though I never sent them. Then one Tuesday evening, a knock at the door. I opened it to find Jason standing there, unshaven, circles under his eyes, but somehow looking more clear-eyed than he had in years. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. He walked to the center of our living room and turned to face me. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began. "About us, about my family, about the kind of man I want to be." I waited, heart hammering. "I called my mother," he continued. "Had the conversation I should have had years ago, about how she treats you, about how I've let her treat you." "How did that go?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Jason gave a humorless laugh. "About as well as you'd expect. There were tears, accusations, guilt trips, but I didn't back down." He took a step toward me. "For the first time in my life, I stood up to Patricia Wilson and didn't apologize for it." Afterwards, something warm unfurled in my chest. Not hope, not yet, but its quieter cousin, possibility. I told her that if she wants me in her life, you come with me. Not as an afterthought, but as my priority. I told her the garage incident was unforgivable, and that we would not be attending any family functions until she acknowledges that and apologizes to you directly. I sank onto the couch, absorbing his words. "What did she say?" "She hung up on me," he said simply. "But I meant every word, Emma, whether she comes around or not." "And your dad?" I asked. I spoke with him. Separately, he was different, quieter. He asked if you were okay. If we were okay. Jason sat beside me, not touching but close. I think the mortgage thing actually earned his respect, in a weird way. He said something about you being formidable. Despite everything, I felt my lips twitch. Robert Wilson, the successful businessman, the patriarch, thought I was formidable. There was a certain irony there. "And what about us?" I finally asked, the question that had been haunting me for weeks. "Are we okay?" Jason took my hand, his touch tentative. "I want us to be. I'm angry that you kept financial secrets from me. I'm hurt that you felt you needed to. But I'm also in awe of your courage." He paused. "And I'm ashamed of how long it took me to show the same courage. With my family." "It wasn't about hurting them," I said softly, "or punishing you. It was about finally drawing a line." "I know that now," he nodded. "It took me some time, but I get it. You did what I couldn't do. You broke the pattern. And as much as it scares me, I think it was necessary." We talked through the night, laying everything bare. The resentments I'd been harboring, the guilt he'd been carrying, the fear that had kept us both trapped in dysfunctional patterns. By morning, we had a plan. First, couples counseling. Weekly sessions with a therapist who specialized in family dynamics and boundaries. Second, transparency about finances. All accounts on the table, joint decisions moving forward. Third, a united front with the Wilsons, with clear expectations about respect and inclusion. That weekend, we met with Mark, my real estate friend, to discuss the Wilson mortgage. Together, we drafted a letter to Robert and Patricia, outlining our intentions. "We do not wish to use this financial arrangement as leverage," we wrote. "The acquisition was a business decision and will remain separate from our personal relationship. However, We believe this new dynamic offers an opportunity for mutual respect moving forward. We signed it together, Jason and Emma Davis. Equal partners. 2 weeks later, Robert called Jason, asked if we would meet them for dinner. Neutral territory, a restaurant downtown. Jason looked at me, eyebrows raised in question. I nodded. It was time. The restaurant was upscale but comfortable, with private booths and soft lighting. Robert and Patricia were already seated when we arrived. Patricia's posture was rigid, her smile tight. Robert stood to greet us, offering his hand first to me, then to Jason. A small gesture, but significant. "Thank you for coming," he said as we sat down. "We've had a lot to think about." The waiter came for drink orders. Patricia, surprisingly, declined her usual Chardonnay. "Just water for me," she said. "I want to be clear-headed for this conversation." Once we were alone again, Robert cleared his throat. "Emma, I owe you an apology. The garage incident was inexcusable. We've prided ourselves on certain standards, and we fell far short of them that weekend." I kept my expression neutral, waiting. "What Robert is trying to say," Patricia interjected, "is that we were wrong. I was wrong." The words seemed to physically pain her. It was petty and deliberately hurtful, and I've been ashamed of it, though too proud to admit that until now. I studied her face, looking for the manipulation, the hidden agenda, but all I saw was a woman confronting her own behavior, perhaps for the first time. "Thank you for acknowledging that," I said simply. "About the mortgage," Robert continued. "It was quite a shock, but also educational." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "I've spent 40 years in business, and I never saw it coming. As one professional to another, it was well executed." "It wasn't personal," I told him. "It was a boundary." "A very effective one," he conceded, "and one that has forced us to reconsider many things." Patricia folded her hands on the table. "We've been talking with a counselor of our own," she said, the admission clearly difficult for her. "About our relationship with Jason, with both of you, with Megan and Tyler as well." Jason and I exchanged surprised glances. "The incident at Thanksgiving made us realize some patterns needed to change," Robert explained. "Neither of us want to be the parents our children avoid, or worse, tolerate out of obligation." "We have a long way to go," Patricia added. "Old habits and all that. But we're trying." The conversation continued through dinner, stilted at times, but honest. No dramatic reconciliation, no tearful hugs, but something was shifting. The ground beneath us changing in tiny seismic ways. As the evening ended, Patricia hesitated, then reached into her purse. She withdrew a small box. "This was my grandmother's," she said, sliding it across the table to me. She was also a woman who didn't suffer fools gladly. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, simple but elegant. "You don't have to wear it," she added quickly. "I just wanted you to have it, as a gesture." I closed the box carefully. "Thank you." Outside the restaurant, as we waited for our cars, Robert pulled Jason aside while Patricia and I stood in awkward silence. "The guest room," she said suddenly. "Excuse me?" "When you visit next, if you visit, you and Jason will have the guest room, the blue one, with the attached bath." She met my eyes directly. No more garages. It wasn't quite an olive branch, maybe just an olive twig, but it was something. The next morning, Jason and I sat at our kitchen table, laptops open, house hunting. The search had taken on new urgency, not to escape his family now, but to establish our own foundation. A place where we made the rules, set the tone, built the traditions. "What about this one?" Jason pointed to a listing in Clintonville, a neighborhood we'd been eyeing. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a small yard. Nothing fancy, but solid. Ours. It's perfect, I said. Let's see it today. As he made the call to the realtor, I fingered the silver bracelet, now on my wrist. Not because I needed Patricia's approval, that ship had sailed, but because accepting it was a choice I was making freely, from a position of strength. Later that day, standing in the living room of what would become our new home, Jason wrapped his arms around me from behind. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his chin resting on my shoulder. I gazed around the empty space, already seeing it filled with our belongings, our choices, our future. "I'm thinking that sometimes you have to sleep in a garage to realize you deserve a home." He tightened his arms around me. "Never again," he promised. "Never again," I agreed. 2 months later, we closed on the house. That same day, I signed the paperwork transferring the Wilson mortgage from Riverside Holdings LLC back to its original lender. Not because I felt obligated, but because I no longer needed that particular boundary. I had built stronger ones since then. The night we moved in, sprawled on our mattress on the floor because the furniture delivery was delayed, Jason traced patterns on my bare shoulder. "Would you do it again?" he asked. "The mortgage thing?" I considered the question carefully. "Yes," I finally said, "but I wish I hadn't needed to. I wish I'd found my voice sooner." He nodded in understanding. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you found it when you did, before we lost each other completely." I curled against him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart against my cheek. "What was the most surprising part of all this?" he asked after a while. "Honestly, that your mother is actually coming to our housewarming next weekend, and that I'm almost looking forward to it." Jason laughed. "She asked me what to bring. I told her just herself. And what did she say to that? That she'd bring a nice bottle of wine as well, but not the good crystal. She said you intimidate her too much now." I smiled into the darkness. "Good," I said. "A little healthy fear never hurt anyone." We fell asleep surrounded by unpacked boxes and possibilities, in a home that was truly ours. Not just the walls and the roof, but the boundaries that protected it, the respect that sustained it, the courage that built it. As for the Wilson mortgage, that particular power play had served its purpose. I no longer needed to own a piece of their foundation to know my worth. I had reclaimed something far more valuable: my voice, my space, my dignity. And sometimes, that's worth more than any piece of property could ever be. 6 months into our new home, the doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon. Jason was in the backyard, trying to salvage the raised garden beds we'd ambitiously built, but neglected to water regularly. I wiped flour-covered hands on my apron, I'd been attempting sourdough again, and opened the door to find Patricia standing on our porch. Alone. In the months since our restaurant dinner, we'd had exactly 3 interactions with the Wilsons. A stilted housewarming where Patricia had indeed brought wine but barely touched her food. A brief coffee meeting when Robert needed to sign some final paperwork related to the mortgage transfer. A quick hello at a community fundraiser we'd accidentally all attended. Each encounter had been civil, but distant. Progress measured in small degrees. Patricia using my name instead of Jason's wife. Robert asking about my work with what seemed like genuine interest. Still, I never expected to find her at our door unannounced, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. "Patricia," I said, surprise making my voice higher than intended. "Is everything okay? Is Robert—" "He's fine," she cut in quickly. "Everyone's fine, I just—" She glanced past me into the house. "May I come in?" Just for a moment. I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Of course." She entered cautiously, as if stepping into foreign territory. In a way, she was. This house had none of the Wilsons' formal elegance. We'd chosen warm colors, comfortable furniture, walls covered with local art and travel photographs. It was deliberately unlike the colonial mansion where Jason had grown up. "I like what you've done here," Patricia said, her eyes scanning the living room. "It's very you." I wasn't sure if that was a compliment. "Thank you. Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Water?" "No, thank you." She perched on the edge of our sofa, still clutching her bag. "Is Jason here?" "In the backyard. I can call him—" "Actually," she interrupted, "I came to speak with you." That stopped me. In 5 years, Patricia had never sought me out specifically. I sat in the armchair across from her, waiting. She took a deep breath. "I've been meeting with Dr. Winters, my therapist, twice a week since January." I nodded, unsure where this was going. "He's been helping me understand some patterns in my behavior, particularly with my children's partners." She smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her linen pants. "It appears I have some control issues." I bit back a smile at the understatement. "I see." "Last session, he suggested I make amends for specific incidents where my behavior was particularly harmful." She looked directly at me for the first time. The garage situation was at the top of the list. The memory still stung, the cold room, the isolation, the deliberate humiliation. "That was a difficult weekend," I said carefully. "It was cruel," Patricia said flatly. "I was cruel. Deliberately so." Her fingers tightened around her bag. "I wanted to hurt you because I felt threatened by you." The admission hung between us, so unexpected that I momentarily forgot to breathe. "Threatened? By me?" She gave a small, tight laugh. "You have to understand, Emma. I've built my entire identity around being the Wilson family matriarch, the one who holds everything together, the one whose opinion matters most to Jason." I nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "Then you came along, and suddenly there was another woman in his life, one he clearly respected and listened to, one who wasn't intimidated by our family traditions or impressed by our social connections." "I just wanted to be treated like I mattered," I said softly. "I know that now," she replied. "But at the time, all I could see was someone taking my son away, changing him, making him question things we'd never questioned." She set her bag down, her posture relaxing fractionally. "The garage," she continued, "was me trying to put you in your place, to show you and everyone else that you were an outsider. It was petty and shameful, and I am truly sorry." The apology was so direct, so unqualified, that for a moment I couldn't respond. 5 years of backhanded compliments and subtle exclusion had not prepared me for Patricia Wilson looking me in the eye and admitting fault. "Thank you for saying that," I finally managed. "It means a lot to hear." "I'm not expecting forgiveness," she added quickly, "or even understanding. Dr. Winters says this is about taking responsibility, not seeking absolution." "Your therapist sounds wise," I said. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "He's infuriatingly so. Every week I leave his office angry because he's right." She paused. "Robert sees him too now, separately, of course." That surprised me. Robert had always seemed so certain, so immovable in his ways. "The mortgage situation was a wake-up call for him," Patricia explained as if reading my thoughts. "He's built his entire career on being the smartest person in the room, to be outmaneuvered by his daughter-in-law." She actually smiled now, a real one. Let's just say it got his attention. I felt my own lips curve upward. That wasn't my intention, but I can't say I'm sorry it had that effect. "No, I don't imagine you are." There was something like respect in her voice. "You know, my mother would have liked you." "Your mother? The one who gave you the bracelet?" Patricia nodded. "Eleanor was formidable. Married my father when She was 19, took over the household accounts by 20. By 30, she was managing all their investments because he was too busy with his law practice. He never knew she was the one making all the financial decisions. I tried to reconcile this image with the Patricia I knew, the woman who deferred to Robert on every decision, who seemed to live for his approval. "What happened to her?" I asked. "She died when I was 23. Cancer." Patricia's voice softened with memory. "After she was gone, my father fell apart. Couldn't manage the simplest household tasks. That's when I realized how much she'd been doing behind the scenes, how much power she'd actually held while letting him believe he was in charge." "And you decided you didn't want that kind of hidden power," I guessed. "You wanted to be the visible authority." She looked surprised at my insight. "Yes, exactly. I swore I'd never be invisible the way she was. That my contributions would be acknowledged, appreciated." Her expression clouded. "Somewhere along the way, that turned into needing to be the only one who mattered." We sat in silence for a moment, the air between us charged with understanding that felt new and fragile. "I brought something for you," Patricia said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a small leather-bound book. My mother's recipes, the ones she actually used, not the ones she shared at church socials. I took the book carefully. The leather was worn soft with age, the pages yellowed at the edges. "Her sourdough was legendary," Patricia added, eyeing the flour on my apron. "The secret was using potato water instead of plain." I blinked in surprise. "How did you know I was making sourdough?" The faintest blush colored her cheeks. "Jason mentioned it when he called last week. Said you were determined to master it even after 3 failed attempts." "He called you?" This was news to me. "Every Sunday for the past month," she admitted. "Just to chat, like we used to when he was in college." Something warm unfurled in my chest. Jason hadn't mentioned these calls, but I understood why. He was rebuilding his relationship with his mother carefully, testing its new boundaries, seeing if it could grow into something healthier. The back door slammed, and Jason's voice called from the kitchen. "Emma, have you seen the pruning shears? Those tomato plants are completely out of control." He appeared in the doorway, dirt smudged across his forehead, then froze at the sight of his mother on our sofa. "Mom? What are you—" His eyes darted to me, searching for signs of distress. "Your mother brought me something," I said, holding up the recipe book. "And we've been having a good talk." Patricia stood, smoothing her pants again. "I should go. I've taken up enough of your afternoon." "You could stay," Jason offered tentatively. "For dinner? It's nothing fancy, just grilled chicken and whatever vegetables Emma can salvage from my gardening attempts." Patricia hesitated, glancing at me. "The tomatoes may be overgrown, but they're delicious," I added. "And I could use some advice on this sourdough situation." A genuine smile spread across her face, transforming her in a way I'd never seen before. "I'd like that. Let me just call Robert. He's probably wondering where I am." "Invite him too," Jason said, the offer so natural it surprised us all. As Patricia stepped outside to make the call, Jason moved to my side. "You okay?" he whispered. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready." I looked up at him. This man who had found his voice, who was learning to balance loyalty to his family of origin with commitment to the one we were building together. "I'm ready to try," I said. "One dinner at a time." He kissed my flour-dusted forehead. "That's all anyone can ask." That evening, the 4 of us sat around our dining table, not the formal mahogany of the Wilson home, but a farmhouse table Jason and I had refinished together. Robert brought wine that was too expensive for the casual meal, but he poured it into our mismatched glasses without comment. Patricia helped me finish the sourdough, her hands confident as she shaped the dough, showing me the proper technique. The conversation was tentative at first, careful circles around safe topics. The weather, a new restaurant downtown, the community garden project I'd been involved with. Then, as we cleared the main course, Robert surprised us all. "We're thinking of downsizing," he said, refilling his glass. "The house is too big for just the two of us. All those rooms we never use." Jason nearly dropped the plate he was carrying. "Seriously? You've talked about that for years, but I never thought you'd actually do it." "Your mother's idea, actually." Robert nodded toward Patricia. Said it's time for a fresh start. Patricia brought the salad bowl to the table. After 40 years, in the same house, change seems appropriate. We're looking at condos downtown near the Arts District. "What about all the furniture, the collections?" Jason asked. The Wilson home was filled with antiques, artwork, generations of accumulated possessions. "We'll keep what matters," Patricia said. "The rest, it's just things." I caught her eye across the table, recognizing something in her expression I hadn't seen before. The same lightness I'd felt when I decided to transfer the mortgage back to let go of a tool I no longer needed. Later, as we said goodbye at the door, Patricia hesitated, then reached out and squeezed my hand briefly. "Thank you for dinner and for listening." "The recipe book," I said. "It means a lot." "Use it well," she replied. "Those recipes deserve to be made in a happy kitchen." After they left, Jason and I stood in the doorway, watching their car pull away. That was... He searched for the right word. "A beginning," I finished for him. He wrapped his arm around my shoulders. "Think it'll last?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. But it felt real tonight. In bed that night, I thought about Eleanor, Patricia's mother, the woman who had wielded quiet power, who had been the invisible foundation of her family. I thought about Patricia, who had tried so hard to be seen that she'd forgotten how to truly see others. I thought about myself, finding a balance between assertion and compassion, between boundaries and bridges. 3 generations of women, each responding to the wounds of the one before, each trying to find her way to wholeness. The next morning, I opened Eleanor's recipe book and found a loose paper tucked between the pages. A letter in Patricia's precise handwriting. "Emma, there are things I should have said today but couldn't find the right words for, so I'm writing them instead. I was wrong about you from the beginning. I saw your strength as a threat rather than as a gift to my son. I mistook your boundaries for rejection. I responded to your dignity with petty cruelty. The garage incident shames me deeply, not just because of what I did, but because of what it revealed about who I had become. When you purchased our mortgage, my first response was rage. My second was fear. But eventually, surprisingly, it became respect. You fought for your place in this family with more courage than I've shown in decades of maintaining the status quo. I don't expect us to become close overnight, or perhaps ever. But I do hope we can build something new, something based on mutual respect rather than competition or obligation. The recipes in this book are my inheritance from a remarkable woman. I'm entrusting them to another. Patricia. I traced my fingers over the words, feeling the impression of the pen on paper, the effort behind each carefully chosen sentence. Then I turned to the first recipe in the book, sourdough starter. At the bottom of the page, in faded ink, Eleanor had written, "The most important ingredient is patience. Good things cannot be rushed." I smiled, closing the book gently. Time to start again, from the beginning. The call came on a Tuesday morning in early spring, just as I was rushing out the door to an important client meeting. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Emma?" Robert's voice sounded different, strained, uncertain. "Are you busy?" I glanced at my watch. 20 minutes until my presentation. "I'm heading to a meeting, but I have a moment. Is everything okay?" A pause. Patricia's in the hospital. Nothing life-threatening, he added quickly. But they're keeping her for observation. Heart rhythm irregularities. My hand tightened on the phone. Which hospital? Riverside. She's stable now, but... Another pause. She's been asking for you. The client meeting suddenly seemed irrelevant. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I called my creative director from the car, explaining the situation and asking her to cover the presentation. Then I called Jason, who was already on his way, to the hospital from his downtown office. She was at her book club when it happened, Jason explained, his voice tight with worry. Dad said she just collapsed mid-sentence, no warning. But she's stable now? I pressed the accelerator a little harder. Yeah, they think it's atrial fibrillation, common in women her age, but they need to run tests, maybe adjust some medications. I found a parking spot near the emergency entrance and hurried inside. The hospital corridors seemed endless, all identical beige walls and squeaking linoleum. I found Jason and Robert in a small waiting area outside the cardiac unit, both looking rumpled and tense. Any update? I asked, brushing a kiss against Jason's cheek. Robert shook his head. Still running tests. They won't let us in yet. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, the confident businessman replaced by a worried husband. She'll be fine, I said with more certainty than I felt. Patricia's tough. Robert attempted a smile. That she is. A doctor in blue scrubs approached, clipboard in hand. Mr. Wilson, your wife is asking for you, and... She consulted her notes. Emma? Jason squeezed my hand. Go ahead. I'll wait here. Robert and I followed the doctor down another corridor to a private room. Patricia lay propped against white pillows, monitoring wires disappearing beneath. Her hospital gown. Her makeup was gone, hair flattened on one side, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Emma, she said, voice raspy but eyes clear. You came. Of course I did. I moved to her bedside, unsure whether to touch her. She solved the dilemma by reaching for my hand. They say it's nothing serious, just a little electrical glitch. They'll fix me right up. Robert kissed her forehead. Scared the life out of me, Patty. Patty? I mouthed silently, having never heard anyone use a nickname for Patricia. She caught my surprise and managed a weak smile. Only Robert gets away with that, and only when I'm not able to object properly. I'll remember that next time we disagree about something. Teased gently. Actually, she said, her expression growing serious. That's part of why I wanted to see you. Robert seemed to understand something I didn't. I'll go update Jason, he said, squeezing his wife's shoulder before leaving us alone. Patricia adjusted her position slightly, wincing. Hospitals always make you think about what matters, don't they? All these machines keeping track of every heartbeat, reminding you how fragile it all is. I nodded, uncertain where this was headed. When it happened, when I felt my heart start racing and the room tilt sideways, I had the strangest thought. She looked down at our joined hands. I thought, I never got to tell Emma about the Christmas ornaments. The Christmas ornaments? I repeated, confused. The ones in the attic, in the cedar chests. 4 generations of them. My grandmother's glass baubles from Germany. My mother's hand-painted angels. The ones I collected on our travels. She looked up at me, eyes suddenly bright with unshed tears. I always planned to pass them down to our daughter-in-law someday. But then I convinced myself you wouldn't want them, that you'd prefer something modern, something that wasn't connected to our family history. The admission hung between us, loaded with meaning beyond Christmas decorations. Patricia, I said carefully, I would be honored to have those ornaments, to continue that tradition. She squeezed my hand. I've been so foolish, Emma. So afraid of being replaced that I nearly guaranteed it would happen. If you and Jason have children someday, I don't want to be the grandmother they see twice a year out of obligation. The mention of children caught me off guard. Jason and I had been discussing the possibility more seriously lately, but we hadn't shared those conversations with anyone. I hesitated, then decided to trust the moment. We've been talking about starting a family soon. Not immediately, but within the next year or so. Patricia's face transformed, joy briefly overwhelming the fatigue. Oh, Emma, that's wonderful. We haven't decided for certain, I cautioned, and we haven't told anyone else yet. I'm honored you shared it with me, she said, and I could see she meant it. And I promise you this, if I'm fortunate enough to be a grandmother, I will never interfere. I will never criticize. I will never make your children feel they have to choose between us. I believe you, I said, surprised to realize it was true. A nurse entered to check Patricia's monitors, effectively ending our conversation. But something had shifted between us. A new understanding. A tentative trust. When I stepped back into the waiting area, Jason looked up anxiously. Everything okay? I nodded. Your mom's tough as nails. She'll be ordering the nurses around by dinner time. He laughed, relief evident in the sound. That sounds about right. Robert returned from speaking with the doctor, looking more composed. They want to keep her overnight for observation, but she should be able to come home tomorrow. They're adjusting her medication. We can take shifts staying with her, I offered. I can cancel my afternoon meetings. Robert looked surprised, then grateful. Thank you, Emma. By evening, Patricia had been moved to a regular room, the immediate concern past. Jason had gone to pick up dinner, leaving Robert and me in the hospital room. Patricia dozed, the medication making her drowsy. She told me about the Christmas ornaments, I said quietly. Robert glanced up from his newspaper. Did she? She's been fretting about those for months, since we decided to downsize. Really? He nodded. Started pulling them out, cataloging them, making lists of which ones came from which side of the family. I think she was afraid they'd end up in a donation bin if she didn't find the right home for them. I had no idea they meant so much to her. Patricia's never been good at sharing what really matters to her, Robert said thoughtfully. She can talk for hours about garden club politics or the neighbor's renovation mistakes, but ask her what she cares about deeply? He shook his head. It's like pulling teeth. Coming from Robert, this insight was unexpected. For years, I'd seen him as Patricia's enabler, the stern patriarch who backed her decisions without question. You understand her better than I. Realized, I said. A small smile played at his lips. 42 years of marriage will do that, even when you're getting it wrong, which we certainly have at times. Patricia stirred, murmuring something unintelligible before settling back into sleep. Did you know she called you the night before our wedding anniversary? Robert asked suddenly. The one where? The garage incident, I supplied. He nodded. She wanted to uninvite you entirely. Said it would be too crowded with all the extended family coming. He looked down at his sleeping wife. I should have said no. Should have told her it was wrong. Instead, I suggested the garage apartment as a compromise. His voice dropped lower. I was a coward, Emma, and I'm deeply sorry for that. The apology, so direct and unqualified, took me by surprise. Thank you for telling me that. When you bought our mortgage, he continued, it was like someone finally called our bluff. All those years of thinking we held all the cards, and suddenly the game had changed. He actually chuckled. I was furious at first, then impressed. Finally, just embarrassed that it had come to that. It wasn't my proudest moment either, I admitted. But I didn't see another way to make you both understand. Oh, we understood, he assured me. In fact, I've been meaning to tell you, that financial maneuver you pulled, it inspired something. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, handing it to me. Wilson and Associates Financial Solutions, it read. Robert Wilson, founder. The address was in the downtown arts district, near where they were looking at condos. You started a new company? I asked, surprised. He nodded. Financial advice for families in transition, helping older generations transfer wealth and knowledge to younger ones. Using what I've learned, the hard way, about letting go of control without letting go of connection. I turned the card over in my hands, genuinely impressed. That's actually brilliant, Robert. I've got one more surprise, he said, reaching back into his pocket. This time he withdrew a second business card, identical except for the name. Emma Davis Wilson, Senior Advisor. What's this? I asked, stunned. An offer, he said simply. Your background in marketing, combined with what you've clearly picked up about financial strategy. He shrugged. Seems like a waste not to combine forces. I stared at the card, speechless. You don't have to answer now, he added quickly. Talk it over with Jason. Think about what it would mean. If it's not right for you, no hard feelings. We'll tear up the card and never mention it again. And if it is right? I asked, still processing. Then we build something new, together, equal partners from the start. Before I could respond, Patricia's eyes fluttered open. Are you two plotting something? She asked, voice foggy with sleep. Robert smiled at his wife. Just getting to know each other a little better, Patty. She looked between us, suspicious, but too tired to interrogate further. Well, don't make any major decisions without me. I caught Robert's eye and we both suppressed smiles. Wouldn't dream of it, he assured her. I slipped the business card into my purse, mind racing with possibilities I'd never considered before. Working with Robert, the man who had once tacitly approved my exile to a garage, as a professional equal. It was either madness or the most unexpected opportunity of my career. Jason returned with takeout containers, the smell of chicken noodle soup filling the small room. As we ate our makeshift dinner, gathered around Patricia's hospital bed, I found myself studying the Wilsons with new eyes. Robert, more perceptive and adaptable than I'd given him credit for. Patricia, vulnerable beneath her carefully maintained facade. Both of them trying, in their imperfect way, to evolve. Outside, darkness had fallen, the hospital windows reflecting our little group back at us. 4 people sharing a meal, connected by choice as much as by circumstance. Not perfect, not even entirely comfortable yet, but present, showing up for each other. Later that night, after we'd returned home and Jason had fallen into exhausted sleep, I sat at our kitchen table with Robert's business card propped against the fruit bowl. The overhead light caught the embossed lettering, making my name gleam. Emma Davis Wilson, Senior Advisor. I ran my finger over the hyphen connecting my birth name to the family I'd married into. A small typographical bridge between my identity and theirs, between who I had been and who I might become. 2 years ago, I'd been relegated to a garage, an unwelcome appendage to the Wilson family tree. Now I was being offered a branch of my own. People change, I thought. Sometimes because they want to, sometimes because they have to. The Wilsons were changing, not completely, not overnight, but genuinely. And so was I. The woman who had bought their mortgage out of righteous anger was giving way to someone more nuanced, someone who could acknowledge hurt without being defined by it. Someone who could accept an olive branch without forgetting why the piece was broken in the first place. I tucked the card into my wallet, next to the faded photograph of my parents, on their wedding day. Tomorrow, I would talk with Jason. Consider the implications. Make a decision that honored both my boundaries and the possibility of new connections. For tonight, I was simply grateful that we had all been in that hospital room together when it mattered. That when Patricia needed me, I had gone without hesitation, that Robert had trusted me enough to offer partnership, that Jason had fallen, asleep with his arm around me, secure in the knowledge that his two worlds were finally, tentatively, merging. Small victories, Eleanor had written in her recipe book, the kind that sustain us through the longer battles. As I turned off the kitchen light and headed to bed, I thought about Christmas ornaments passed down through generations, about recipes preserved in weathered leather books, about traditions that evolve but don't disappear, about the garage that had once symbolized my exclusion, now transformed in memory to the catalyst that had ultimately earned me a seat at the table. Not just any seat. My own seat, one I'd claimed by refusing to accept less than I deserved. Outside our bedroom window, spring rain began to fall, gentle but persistent, washing away the old, nourishing the new. I slipped under the covers beside Jason, his warmth familiar and comforting. Tomorrow would bring decisions. Tonight brought peace. 1 year later, I stood in the doorway of what had once been our home office, now transformed into a nursery. Soft yellow walls had replaced the stark white. A wooden crib stood where my desk had been, and a rocking chair waited by the window. The afternoon sun cast golden rectangles across the handmade quilt, a gift from my mother, draped over the crib rail. "It's really happening," I whispered, one hand resting on my rounded belly. 7 months pregnant, and still sometimes caught, off guard by the reality of it. Jason appeared behind me, wrapping his arms around what remained of my waist. "Second thoughts?" I leaned back against him. "No, just taking it all in." The journey to this moment had been unexpected in every way. My partnership with Robert at Wilson & Associates had flourished beyond anyone's expectations. My marketing background brought a fresh perspective to financial advising, attracting younger clients looking to build generational wealth mindfully. Robert's experience gave us credibility with established clients. Together, we'd created something neither of us could have built alone. More surprising was how our professional relationship had transformed our personal one. Working side by side 3 days a week, we'd developed a mutual respect that gradually, improbably, became genuine affection. Robert was still Robert, opinionated, sometimes stubborn, but he listened now, considered other perspectives, acknowledged when he was wrong. Patricia had found her own evolution. After recovering from her heart scare, she'd thrown herself into downsizing with unexpected enthusiasm. The massive colonial was sold to a young family with 3 children, a fact that pleased her enormously. "That house needs to be filled with noise again," she'd said at the closing. "It's been too quiet for too long." She and Robert moved into a sleek downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and a terrace overlooking the river. Half their furniture went to auction, the rest distributed among family or donated. Patricia kept only what she truly loved, including the Christmas ornaments, now carefully cataloged and stored in custom archival boxes. When Jason and I announced my pregnancy, Patricia had asked, tentatively, respectfully, if she might help. With the nursery. Not take over, she emphasized, just contribute in whatever way we felt comfortable with. I'd invited her to join me in choosing the paint color. A small step that became afternoon tea, which led to nursery furniture shopping, which evolved into weekly lunch dates where we discussed everything from pediatricians to Patricia's volunteer work at the Downtown Arts Center. She was trying. We all were. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. "That'll be them," Jason said, checking his watch. Right on time, as usual. I smoothed my maternity dress and took a deep breath. Today was the official nursery reveal, the first time Robert and Patricia would see the finished room. More importantly, it was the day we'd share the name we'd chosen for our daughter, a decision we'd kept to ourselves until now. Jason opened the front door to his parents. Robert carried a gift bag. Patricia held a small bouquet of yellow roses. Perfect timing, I greeted them, accepting Patricia's brief hug. We just finished setting up the last touches this morning. We brought a little something, Robert said, holding up the bag. Nothing extravagant. I smiled at his careful qualification. Both he and Patricia had been conscientious about not overstepping, sometimes to the point of overcorrection. You didn't need to bring anything. Oh, it's not really a gift, Patricia said quickly. More of a family item we thought you might want to incorporate. Curiosity piqued, I led them to the nursery. Patricia gasped softly as she entered, her eyes taking in every detail. It's beautiful, she said, turning to take in the full room. So peaceful, but still cheerful. Robert nodded his approval. Fine craftsmanship on that crib, solid wood. Maple, Jason confirmed, built by a local woodworker. Should last through multiple children. Patricia's eyes widened slightly at the mention of multiple children, but she said nothing. Progress indeed. So, Robert said, glancing at the gift bag in his hands. Should we do this now? I nodded and we all settled in. Jason and I on the window seat, Robert and Patricia in the rocking chair and the small armchair we'd positioned nearby. Robert handed me the bag. As Patricia said, not really a gift. More of a family tradition, if you want it. Inside was a small antique silver frame tarnished with age. Behind the glass, a delicate piece of embroidery, a family tree with tiny stitched names dating back to the 1890s. It's been passed down through Robert's family, Patricia explained. Each generation adds their branch. The last entry is Jason. She pointed to his name, stitched in blue thread at the bottom of the tree. It's beautiful, I said, genuinely touched. And the perfect thing for a nursery. Only if you want it, Robert added. No pressure. We know you're creating your own traditions. Actually, Jason said, glancing at me for confirmation, this is the perfect moment to share our daughter's name. He took my hand. We've decided to call her Eleanor, Emma Davis Wilson. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth, tears immediately welling in her eyes. Eleanor? After my mother? I nodded. She sounds like an incredible woman, someone who knew her own power and used it wisely. That's what we want for our daughter. Robert cleared his throat, clearly moved but trying to maintain composure. It's a fine name, Strong. We thought so, Jason agreed, squeezing my hand. And the Davis Wilson? Robert asked. Not just Wilson? She'll carry both our heritages, I explained, just like I do professionally now. The hyphen matters. It's a bridge, not a division. Patricia wiped at her eyes. Eleanor would have loved that, the symbolism of it. She looked at the embroidered family tree, then back at us. May I add her name when she arrives? I still have my mother's embroidery kit. We'd be honored, I said, meaning it. Later, after dinner and dessert and comfortable conversation on our back patio, the Wilsons prepared to leave. As Robert gathered their things, Patricia lingered in the nursery doorway, looking at the silver-framed family tree we'd already placed on a shelf. Thank you, she said quietly when I joined her. For the name. For allowing us to be part of this journey. I know we didn't earn it easily. Family isn't about what's earned, I replied. It's about what's built, over and over again, even when it's difficult, maybe especially then. She nodded, understanding. The garage, she said, naming the incident that had once stood as an insurmountable barrier between us. I still think about that night. How close we came to losing all of this before it even began. I think about it too, I admitted. But not with anger anymore. More like recognition of a turning point. For all of us, she agreed. As we walked toward the front door where Robert and Jason waited, Patricia hesitated, then asked, Do you ever regret buying the mortgage? Taking such a dramatic step? I considered the question carefully. No, I finally said. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that I didn't find my voice sooner, in smaller ways. But I don't regret finally drawing a line that couldn't be ignored. She nodded thoughtfully. It woke us up, all of us. She glanced back toward the nursery. Eleanor, both Eleanors would approve, I think. After they left, Jason and I returned to the nursery, turning on the small lamp that cast star-shaped patterns across the ceiling. That went well, he said, wrapping an arm around me. Better than I expected, honestly. Your mother cried when... We told her the name, I said, still somewhat surprised by her emotional reaction. I've never seen her like that. You gave her something she never thought she'd have, Jason replied. A genuine connection to her granddaughter, to us. As if responding to our conversation, the baby kicked sharply, a small foot or elbow, briefly visible against the taut skin of my belly. Jason placed his hand over the movement, his expression wondering. She's going to be strong, he murmured, like her namesakes. I covered his hand with mine. And loved. By all of us. In our own imperfect ways. That night, unable to find a comfortable sleeping position, I slipped out of bed and padded back to the nursery. The moon had risen, casting silver light across the room. I settled into the rocking chair, feeling the gentle motion soothe both me and the restless child within. My gaze fell on the silver-framed family tree. Soon, Eleanor's name would join the others, stitched by her grandmother's hand. A new branch, a new generation, a new beginning. 2 years ago, I'd slept in a freezing garage, an unwelcome outsider, in a family that saw me as a threat. Now I sat in a nursery created with love from all directions, carrying a child who would connect us all. The journey hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been hard conversations, painful revelations, fragile trusts tested and sometimes broken. There would be more challenges ahead, old patterns reasserting themselves, boundaries needing reinforcement, new territories to navigate. But we had found our way to this moment of peace, not through pretending the past hadn't happened, but by acknowledging it. Not by erasing our differences, but by respecting them. Not by demanding perfection, but by accepting genuine effort. I rocked quietly in the moonlight, one hand resting on my belly where Eleanor grew, surrounded by the tangible evidence of what can happen when you refuse to accept less than you deserve, and when others rise to meet that challenge. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply claim your space, set your boundary, stand in your truth. And sometimes, when you least expect it, others will join you there. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.